The plant that kept your great-grandmother alive through 2 wars and a depression is probably growing wild behind your fence right now, and you've been pulling it out as a weed. Somewhere between the drive-through pharmacy and the disappearance of a family garden, we lost something. Not the plants most are still here, still growing, still waiting. We lost the knowledge of what they could do. This video gives it back. Stick around for number 17, a root Chinese herbalists have used for 2,000 years to help the body handle stress itself. And number 20 will change how you look at every fence line in America. If you want to be one of the people who chooses to remember what the world decided to forget, hit subscribe before we start. Here are 20 perennial crops that keep you young forever, ranked from remarkable to absolutely unforgettable. Number 1. Garlic. Ancient Sumerian clay tablets from around 2600 BC already listed garlic as medicine, and Egyptian pyramid laborers were rationed it daily, believed to give them strength for brutal desert work. Physicians of the era prescribed it for infections and fatigue centuries before anyone knew what a bacterium was. When antibiotics arrived in the 1940s, garlic's medical reputation quietly got demoted to the spice rack. Something doctors once relied on became something you just throw in a pan. Research suggests allicin, the compound released when garlic is crushed, carries measurable antimicrobial properties and can modestly support healthy blood pressure. Studies continue to explore its role in cardiovascular health. Crush a clove and let it sit exposed to air for 10 minutes before eating it raw. That waiting period is what activates the allicin that cooking destroys. Garlic thins the blood. If you're on blood thinners or have surgery coming up, talk to a doctor before eating it medicinally. Your grandmother kept a braid of it hanging in the kitchen. She never explained why. Now you know. Number 2. Asparagus. Egyptian tomb art from 3000 BC depicts asparagus as an offering fit for royalty, and Greek physician Dioscorides documented its medicinal use nearly 2,000 years ago. This wasn't a side dish, it was medicine that happened to taste good. Somewhere along the way, asparagus became a vegetable you serve at dinner parties, and nothing more its history as a diuretic and detoxifying plant erased from a conversation entirely. Studies show asparagus contains asparagine and antioxidant compounds that support kidney function and may help the body process excess fluid and inflammation. Steam the spears lightly and eat them within days of harvest. Asparagus loses much of its nutrient density the longer it sits after cutting. This plant outlived every empire that once considered it sacred enough to bury with their kings. Number 3. Rhubarb. Chinese medical texts dating back over 4,000 years describe rhubarb root as a powerful remedy, and it traveled the Silk Road as a prized trade good long before Europeans ever ate the stalks in a pie. Western cooks kept the stalks and threw away everything else, stripping this plant of the medicinal root use it was originally famous for. Research indicates compounds in rhubarb root show anti-inflammatory and antimicrobial activity, and Chinese medicine has used it for digestive regulation for centuries. Only the stalks are food. The root has traditionally been dried and prepared as tea, in small doses, under experienced guidance. The leaves contain concentrated oxalic acid and are genuinely toxic. Never eat them. Most Americans grow this plant in their backyard without knowing half of it could hurt them, and the other half was once serious medicine. Number 4. Horseradish. Ancient Greeks valued horseradish so highly that legend has the oracle at Delphi declaring it worth its weight in gold. Egyptians used it medicinally as far back as 1500 BCE. We reduced one of the most bioactive roots in the plant kingdom to a condiment squeezed from a jar at a steakhouse. Studies show horseradish contains glucosinolates and sinegrin, compounds with documented antimicrobial properties, along with high concentrations of vitamin C. Grate the fresh root and mix it with vinegar within minutes of grating the compounds that give it medicinal punch. Degrade fast once exposed to air. We spent billions developing synthetic antibacterial compounds while this root sat in gardens doing something similar for over 3,000 years. Number 5. Jerusalem artichoke. Native American tribes across the eastern woodlands cultivated this sunflower relative for centuries before European contact, prizing the tuber as a reliable food source that survived harsh winters underground. As industrial wheat and potato farming took over, this resilient native tuber all but vanished from American plates. Research shows Jerusalem artichoke is rich in inulin, a prebiotic fiber. Study suggests supports gut bacteria and helps regulate blood sugar response. The tubers store in the ground through frost and can be dug and eaten fresh well into winter. No root cellar required. This one is still growing across most of the eastern United States. Right now the question is whether you'd recognize it in a ditch. Number 6. Comfrey. Medieval European herbalists called comfrey knit bone, and battlefield healers packed crushed root onto broken limbs as far back as the Crusades, long before modern casting existed. By the late 20th century, comfrey quietly disappeared from herbal shelves as liver toxicity concerns emerged. A plant once trusted with battlefield injuries became something herbalists feared to touch. Research confirms comfrey contains allantoin, a compound with documented tissue-regenerating properties still used in some topical skin preparations today. Traditionally, crushed comfrey leaves were made into a poultice for bruises and closed wounds never taken internally. Comfrey contains pyrrolizidine alkaloids that are genuinely toxic to the liver if ingested. Modern use is external only, and even that should stay limited. This one is still growing across old farmhouses and homestead gardens everywhere. Most people walk past it without knowing what their great-grandparents trusted it to do. Number 7. Turmeric. Ayurvedic texts from India dating back over 4,000 years describe turmeric as sacred medicine, used in temples and prescribed for wounds and inflammation long before written history caught up. Western medicine dismissed turmeric as folk seasoning for decades, until a wave of modern research forced a reconsideration of what Indian healers already knew. Studies show curcumin, turmeric's active compound, has measurable anti-inflammatory and antioxidant effects, and research continues exploring its role in chronic inflammation. Combine turmeric with black pepper, and a source of fat piperine in black pepper dramatically increases how much curcumin your body absorbs. This plant outlived every empire that discovered it, and it's still sitting in most American spice cabinets, completely misunderstood. Number 8. Ginger. Confucius reportedly ate ginger with every meal, and Chinese physicians were documenting its medicinal use over 5,000 years ago as essential to digestive health. Ginger survived commercially, but its medicinal identity got flattened into stomach settler, a fraction of what ancient physicians actually used it for. Research confirms ginger contains gingerol, a compound studies show as anti-inflammatory and anti-nausea properties, along with documented support for digestion. Grate fresh ginger into hot water, and steep for 10 minutes. Fresh root delivers noticeably more gingerol than the dried powder most people default to. Your grandmother had ginger tea ready the moment anyone in the house felt sick. She never called it medicine. It was just what you did. Number 9. Astragalus. Traditional Chinese medicine has used astragalus root for over 2,000 years, classifying it among the most important tonic herbs in the entire pharmacopoeia. Astragalus never crossed into mainstream Western use the way ginseng or turmeric did, leaving one of the most studied adaptogenic roots in the world almost completely unknown here. Studies suggest astragalus supports healthy immune function and may help the body regulate its response to physical stress. Dried astragalus root is traditionally simmered into soups and broths for hours, since it's too fibrous to eat directly. We spent billions on immune supplements built in labs, while this root sat quietly in Chinese kitchens doing similar work for 2 millennia. Number 10. Goji berry. Chinese texts reference goji berries, sometimes called wolfberries, as longevity food for over 1,000 years, tied to legends of herbalists who lived past 100 eating them daily. Goji berries arrived in American health food stores as a trendy superfood with almost none of the cultural or medicinal context that made them significant in the first place. Research shows goji berries are dense in antioxidants, particularly zeaxanthin, which studies link to eye health, alongside documented immune-supporting compounds. Dried goji berries can be eaten straight, steeped into tea, or added to broth the same way Chinese herbalists have for generations. This one is still growing on hardy perennial shrubs that survive most American climates. The question is whether you've ever actually planted one. Number 11. Elderberry. European folk healers were preparing elderberry syrup for respiratory illness as far back as ancient Greece, and Hippocrates referenced the elder tree's medicinal properties in his own writings. As pharmaceutical cold remedies took over drugstore shelves in the 20th century, elderberry syrup went from a household staple to something your great-grandmother made, and nobody else remembered how. Studies show elderberry contains flavonoids with documented antiviral and immune-supporting properties, and some research suggests it may shorten cold and flu duration. Simmer ripe, cooked elderberries with water and honey into a traditional syrup. Raw berries and any other part of the plant should never be eaten. This plant outlived generations of cold remedies that came and went, and it's still standing in hedgerows everywhere. Number 12. Milk thistle. Ancient Greek and Roman physicians, including Pliny the Elder, documented milk thistle's use for liver ailments nearly 2,000 years ago, calling it one of the era's most reliable remedies. Milk thistle faded from common use as synthetic liver medications took over, leaving one of the most researched liver-supporting plants in history sitting forgotten in vacant lots. Research confirms silymarin, milk thistle's active compound, has documented liver protective and antioxidant properties studied extensively in clinical settings. The seeds are traditionally crushed and steeped as tea, since the beneficial compounds concentrate there. Milk thistle can interact with medications processed by the liver, so anyone on prescription drugs should check with a doctor first. We spent billions developing liver support pharmaceuticals while this spiky weed sat in vacant lots doing something similar for 2,000 years. Number 13. Nettle. European herbalists have used stinging nettle since at least the Iron Age, and Roman soldiers reportedly used it to warm circulation during cold, wet campaigns across Britain. Modern lawn care treats nettle as an enemy to be sprayed and removed, erasing a plant that herbalists once relied on for nutrition and joint support. Studies suggest nettle contains compounds with anti-inflammatory properties and is notably dense in iron and calcium once cooked. Boiling or steaming nettle for 30 seconds neutralizes the sting completely, after which it can be eaten like spinach. Your grandmother had a name for this plant. She kept it in her kitchen garden. We forgot to ask her why. Number 14. Ginseng. Chinese emperors reportedly paid more for wild ginseng root than for gold, and its medicinal relevance stretches back over 5,000 years across Chinese and Korean tradition. Wild American ginseng populations were harvested toward collapse in the 20th century as export demand exploded, stripping Appalachian forests of a plant most Americans never knew was there. Research suggests ginsenosides, ginseng's active compounds, may support energy regulation and the body's resilience to physical and mental stress. The root is traditionally dried and simmered slowly into tea, steeped for hours to draw out its full potency. We spent billions on energy drinks and synthetic stimulants while this root sat quietly in Appalachian forests, nearly harvested into extinction by people who never understood what they were digging up. Notice something by now. None of this was lost by accident. Synthetic replacements got patented, and patented things get marketed. Plants that already grew for free never stood a chance. Tell me in the comments which crop on this list shocked you the most, and why. I read every single one. Back to the list, it's about to go deeper. Number 15. Morina. Ancient Egyptians and Indian Ayurvedic healers both used morina over 3,000 years ago, and Roman and Greek armies reportedly used morina oil to treat skin ailments on long campaigns. Morina remains a staple food crop across Africa and Asia today, but stayed almost entirely absent from American diets until very recently. Studies show morina leaves are exceptionally dense in vitamins and antioxidant compounds, with research pointing to anti-inflammatory and blood sugar-supporting effects. The dried leaves are traditionally ground into powder and stirred into water, soups, or grains as a daily supplement. Morina root bark is genuinely toxic and should never be eaten. Only the leaves, and in some cases the seed pods, are safe for regular use. This one is still growing as a fast-maturing perennial tree across the warmer regions of the U.S. The question is whether you've ever seen one and known what it was. Number 16. Dandelion. Chinese, Arabic, and Native American healing traditions independently documented dandelion's medicinal use going back over 1,000 years, treating root, leaf, and flower as valuable. 20th century lawn culture turned dandelion into public enemy number one, and an entire industry of herbicides was built specifically to eliminate a plant that healers once cultivated on purpose. Research suggests dandelion root and leaf support liver function and act as a natural diuretic with documented antioxidant activity throughout the plant. The root can be roasted and ground into a caffeine-free coffee substitute, a method that dates back generations in wartime rationing kitchens. This plant outlived every chemical campaign launched against it and is still growing in every single crack of pavement in America. Number 17. Chicory. Ancient Egyptians cultivated chicory as both food and medicine as far back as 1500 BC, and Pliny the Elder documented its use for liver and digestive ailments. Chicory survived mainly as a coffee additive during wartime shortages, and once real coffee became affordable again, its deeper medicinal reputation was left behind entirely. Studies show chicory root is rich in inulin fiber, and research suggests it supports gut bacteria, digestion, and healthy blood sugar regulation. The root is traditionally roasted, ground, and brewed like coffee, a preparation carried through generations of hardship and rationing. Your grandmother had a name for this. She brewed it when real coffee ran out during the war. We forgot to ask her why she kept doing it after coffee came back. Number 18. Horsetail. Roman and medieval European healers used horsetail for wound healing and urinary health for centuries, with documented use stretching back to ancient Greek physicians treating bleeding and tissue repair. Horsetail quietly disappeared from herbal use as synthetic diuretics and calcium supplements took its place, despite centuries of continuous documented use across multiple civilizations. Research shows horsetail is notably rich in silica, a compound study suggests supports bone, hair, and connective tissue health. Dried horsetail is traditionally steeped as tea, using the stems and stalks rather than the roots. Horsetail contains an enzyme called thiaminase that can deplete vitamin B1 with prolonged use, and it should never be used long-term without guidance or by anyone with kidney issues. Most Americans mow this plant down along ditches and creek beds every summer without knowing what it once treated. Number 19. Sea buckthorn. Genghis Khan's armies reportedly carried sea buckthorn berries across the steppes for endurance, and Tibetan and Mongolian medical traditions have documented its use for over 1,000 years. Sea buckthorn never made the jump into Western agriculture, leaving one of the most nutrient-dense berries on Earth almost entirely unknown outside Central Asia. Studies show sea buckthorn berries are unusually rich in omega-7 fatty acids and vitamin C, with research suggesting benefits for skin and cardiovascular health. The berries are traditionally pressed into juice or oil, since the raw fruit is extremely tart and hard to eat directly. Sea buckthorn oil can interact with blood-thinning medications, so anyone on those prescriptions should check with a doctor before regular use. We spent billions developing omega supplements in labs, while this thorny shrub quietly outproduced them on the open steppe for 1,000 years. Number 20. Solomon's seal. Native American healers and medieval European herbalists both documented Solomon's seal root independently, centuries apart, for joint and connective tissue support two civilizations that never met, arriving at the same conclusion. This is the plant almost nobody alive today has heard of. It wasn't replaced by a synthetic drug. It wasn't banned. It simply stopped being taught, generation after generation, until the knowledge reached zero. Traditional use and limited modern research point to Solomon's seal root supporting joint flexibility and connective tissue repair, and application herbalists in two unrelated cultures documented independently. The root is traditionally dried and prepared as tincture or tea, harvested only from plants at least 3 years established. The berries of Solomon's seal are toxic and should never be eaten. Only the root, properly prepared, has documented traditional use. This plant outlived every civilization that discovered it, and right now, it is quite possibly growing in the shaded tree line at the edge of your own property, completely unrecognized, waiting for someone to remember what it's for. Every plant on this list tells the same story from a different angle. None of this knowledge disappeared because it stopped working. It disappeared because nothing you can grow for free in your backyard can be patented and sold back to you at a markup, so an entire way of understanding health stopped being taught, one generation at a time, until almost nobody remembered any of it. Here's your challenge. Before you do anything else today, walk your property, your yard, your fence line, the ditch down the road, and actually look. Something on this list is likely already growing there. If this changed how you think about what's growing around you, hit like right now. Tell me in the comments which crop shocked you the most, and would you actually try growing one yourself? And if you want to keep remembering what the world decided to forget, subscribe and join the people choosing to pass this knowledge forward. Somewhere on your property, something is growing that your great-grandmother knew by name, and the only real question left is whether you'll finally ask what it's for.